Hello, this is Mr. Jarrett, and in this video I am going to take you through the intro demo for my visual design class, where we are going to be recreating the Adobe Illustrator logo that I have pictured here. During this tutorial, I'm going to try to cover just some basic tools, some of the panels, some of the mouse functions, some quick keys, fill, stroke, eyedropper, some difference of the selection arrows, placing versus copying and pasting, layers, sublayers, visibility, lock, grouping. That's a lot of stuff to try to cover and try to remember this all in one video here. But hopefully you just saw and you may have heard my explanation between the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator. Photoshop being raster-based photos, so photos that are bits of information of color with pixels, whereas Illustrator is more of a math-driven program that you draw vector lines, and the computer itself, when you try to rescale something, it recalculates and plots those dots somewhere else on that grid, and it redraws that line for you, keeping everything crystal clear and being able to be sized up or sized down at any time. Okay, so that's again just a little gist of the difference there. So you will see a lot of similarities between the two because they both are Adobe programs, like the eyedropper. You've probably used that before. So I'm going to try to just kind of explain a couple of the differences, and we'll go from there. All right, so I'm going to pull this to my other screen so I can have a little reminder of looking off of these. If you have the capability of dual screening, that's great. If you don't, that's fine. You can just minimize this page. So I opened up Adobe Illustrator, and when you first open it up, you might have a different screen that looks like this. It may be the very first time you've ever opened it, but you're simply just going to hit Create New. Now, when you're making a new document, you see I have Recent up here because I've recently created a whole bunch of different documents. You might not have that. You might not even have anything over here on the right. So you can see up at the top that there's different presets for you. We're just simply just trying to make an easy document. So let's just go to print, and you can see letter. Letter is like the normal size piece of paper. So if we have letter selected, and we're going to make our orientation go landscape or sideways because that's what the orientation of that logo is. Instead of being in points, I'm going to change this to inches. Okay, now, does that really matter for right now? No, not at all. But you know, that's a normal size piece of paper, 11 by 8.5, so you can actually see that. Then I'll hit create. Now, every single person's computer will probably look different than mine, just in a slight way. Maybe your Adobe program was opened before by somebody else. Somehow, some of the presets got carried over back and forth. I tried to take out all of my presets. I tried to remove them back to the default so your screen might look similar to mine. Okay, so Illustrator itself has different presets built in for its layout. What I like to use is Essentials Classic. So I'm going to show you how to set your screen up so it looks like mine. Once you get familiar with Illustrator, feel free to customize it in any way you would like. But since you're just learning at this point, I would like you to try to follow along with me here and make your screen look like mine. So I'm going to go to Essentials Classic, that drop down. It's going to change some things a little bit. The main thing that you probably noticed right away is it put this bar up here. I really like that bar. You use that all the time. And it brought up a whole bunch of different panels. So these side pieces, I don't know if this is their official name or not, but I call them panels. Okay. And then you have all of your smaller panels just kind of compressed right here on this large tab. So what I like to do is I like to collapse this, and I drag that just by clicking on that little dotted area section. Okay, drag it over to all the other panels. So nothing's there. Now, the one that has these two diamonds, that's your layers panel. If you do not see this or any other panel that I describe ever, all of the panels can be located up under the Windows button. So up under Windows, if you didn't know which one was the layer panel, you can simply just go down here and select layers. And it pops up. Now you see it's still attached to this whole entire thing. I like to click and hold down in this dark area back here and drag the layers panel out. So it's kind of floating by itself. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing for my stroke panel. So your stroke panel is the one that has 3 horizontal lines. Again, if it's not over here and you can't find it, just go up to Window and Stroke. Okay, and I'm going to pull that off to the side as well. Now, what I like to do from here is I like to click and hold on this, and I drag it all the way over to the right. And you see how these blue lines are showing up? That's asking you where you want to place this. So I'm going to drag it all the way to the right and let go, and it places it huge over here on the far right side. I like to then take my stroke panel and anything else that's attached to it, and I like to drag that down underneath my layers until I see the blue line down there, and I let go, and it put it down here. I also like to expand my strokes. So over here on the right, you see there's these 3 horizontal lines, this little drop down. If you select that and hit Show Options, it shows a lot more options in your stroke panel. And we'll use these from time to time, and I'll actually show you what some of these do here during this demo. Now, you may or may not still have this little thing up here. You could close out of this if you'd like, or you can just drag this over to this panel. Some people completely get rid of this. Some people just leave it there. It doesn't really matter. But what you did just set up was your layers and your stroke. And these are the main 2 things that I like to use. Again, you can customize this as much as you like later on down the road. So these are your panels. Up here at the top, you kind of have like a working panel. This changes per tool that you're on. And over here on the left, you have all of your tools. Now, these tools might be in a single column or a double column. I normally keep mine in a double column. If you want them in a single column, you just press this little button right here, little double arrows, and now it fills your whole screen. I just find it harder to find. So I have my double column here. So that is some of the tools, the panels, stuff like that. Let's go through your mouse. So your mouse has a little scroll wheel. If you move up or down on that scroll wheel, it moves your window up or down. Okay. If you hold in Alt on the keyboard, so my left hand, because I'm using the mouse in my right hand, my left hand kind of hovers down in the bottom left-hand corner of my keyboard. If I hold in the Alt key and I scroll up or down, it zooms in or zooms out. And you can actually see the percentage down here in the bottom left-hand corner change. So zooming in, zooming out. Okay. If I let go of Alt and I hold in Control, that pans left or right when I scroll up or down. Now, I never really use the left or right pan. If I let go of Control, I never even use the up and down movement. I mainly just hold in Alt, I zoom in, I zoom out, I zoom in again to relocate myself around the screen. Now, why I am zooming in and zooming out, I'm going to show you a little bit of a difference between Photoshop and Illustrator. So Photoshop, from my experience, and this is me zoomed all the way out, Photoshop, from my experience, you are only allowed to design on the document layer itself, like the document size. So our document size that we created was 11 wide by 8.5 tall. That's this white area right here, okay? But this dark gray area is also a spot that you can design on. Now, if you were to hit print, nothing out here would print, okay? So I kind of represent this or look at this like this entire area is the desk, okay? A physical desk I'm working on. And that's my piece of paper. You know, yeah, I can color on my desk, but it didn't get on my paper. Can you also color on your paper? Yes. Okay. So you can design way out here if you really need to. You can then just drag it over to your piece of paper. Okay. So that is kind of nice. Photoshop doesn't really have that. It's more design room for the time being. So that is your tools, your panels, your mouse. Quick keys here. I said I keep my hand in my bottom left-hand corner of my keyboard. I showed you about the Alt and Control. I will also say Control Z is undo, Control X is cut, Control C is copy, Control V is paste. Control A, so moving up a row, is select all. Control S is save. And those are a lot of the main ones that you use right there. So your left hand, you'll get used to your fingers down there working on those quick keys. Okay, another difference is that we have a fill and stroke. So down here in Photoshop, you have a foreground and background, they're 2 different colors. Here you have a fill and stroke. A fill does exactly what it says. It fills the color in, and a stroke, another word for that would be outline. Okay, you can flip-flop these two colors by hitting this little double way arrow, or if you just want to edit that stroke itself, you just click on the stroke. Now, the nice thing with the Essential Classic is it also brings it up here. So you can see this kind of expanded. It has some drop downs, and here you've got your swatches already pre-made for you. Okay, so that's pretty nice. Down here to edit this color, you either have to use the colors panel, or if you double click on it, it opens up to the color picker. Okay, so that's just a little bit of the different layouts and looks that are similar but slightly different than Photoshop. Okay, so let's use the file place, and we're going to place in that image. So I'm going to go file place, and we're going to use the image that I gave you. So you can see if you find your visual design folder, I probably have a folder in there for you called Day One Demo. Okay, and inside of here, there is a PNG. It says Illustrator Logo Vector. So you might not have this other stuff. You're not going to have period 2, 3, 4. That's because these are files I saved and we didn't get completed with those, or maybe we did and I just saved them in here. We want to place in this Illustrator logo. So select it and hit place. Now, once you click place, it's going to ask you, where do you want to place it? So you simply click. Okay. And I'm going to move over here on the left side. And you're probably already on this, but this is the selection tool. Okay. So with the selection tool, the black arrow, notice you can move this thing around. You can move it wherever you'd like. You see that there's also these dots on the outside. So I don't want you to do this, but I'll show you. You can actually skew this. You can rescale it and mess it up real quick. If you did that, you simply hit Control Z until it goes back to normal. Okay, so some of the other tools that we have over here, just running through these, we have the normal selection tool, the direct selection tool, which they are different. I will show you both of those. Here's some magic wand and lassos. I don't really use those too much. Your pen tool, which I think is the very powerful or most powerful drawing tool in Illustrator. It's my own personal opinion. Then there is this curvature tool, which we'll use once. I'll show you what that is. Your text tool, your line tool, like a shape tool. So there's ellipses and other shapes underneath that. Paint brushes, your shaper tool will have an activity with that. Eraser tool. This is like your rotate and scale. There's another scale. So, oh, this is rotate and reflect. I apologize. That's your scale and shear. You have your shape builder tool and different other kind of warping tools that you may have. They're like editing of shapes. We'll use them from time to time. The free transform, and then you have some others down here that you won't really get into too much. They're more like specific tools that there's only certain occasions you'd use them. So, perspective, like the mesh, your gradients, your eyedroppers. This stuff down here we will use. But then there's just a few in the middle you don't really use too much. So for right now, we're just going to be on our selection tool. You can select this, you can move it around, you can see all that. Okay. Over here on the right side, now that that's placed in, you see I have layer 1. Okay, they color code these. So each layer that you make is going to have a little color rectangle over here. So my first layer is blue. I don't know what yours is, but mine's blue. You can see there's an eyeball turned on, so that's the visibility. If I turn that on or off, it's going to turn off my layer. There's a little caret drop down, and that drop down will show you anything that's in that layer. So the layers work differently than Photoshop. Photoshop, you really can only edit the layer that you are on, unless you select one little option there that allows you to select different layers. But Photoshop, keep in mind, it doesn't see it as individual vectors or files. It sees it as little dots of information. Here, however, this is a linked file. Okay, so I can actually just turn that eyeball off on that one. You can even lock this if you'd like. And that little empty spot right there is called the toggle lock. So if you select that toggle lock, now you cannot move this. So I'm going to keep mine selected, my lock turned on, because I don't want to edit this. I want to just replicate it. I want to draw right on top of it. All right. Let's start out by holding in Alt and scrolling down here. Okay. And I'm going to use the rectangle tool. So over on the left side, you may have the rectangle tool. Okay, simply select that. And if you move your mouse over this, I'm going to move up to the top left corner. Yours might have this little anchor thing that pops up. That kind of is just saying, hey, I know this picture ends right here, so let's put the starting point right there. Okay, it kind of locks onto it. So I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to drag down to the other corner and let go. Okay. Now my default colors were white and black down here, so you can see there's a white fill and a black stroke. If I were to hit flip flop, now you can see there's a white stroke and a black fill. Okay. But what I'm going to ask you to do is have the fill selected here, so not the stroke, the fill, and hit this button right here that says none. Okay, that way you can actually see the picture underneath. We're going to use the eyedropper tool. So following your mouse all the way down this left column, you'll come all the way down and it's something that looks like kind of like a turkey baster or a pipette, um, or actually an eyedropper. Basically, it has like a little rubberized top. You put it into liquid, squeeze it, let it go, and it fills back up. So what this thing does is it takes a sample of color. Okay. So with the eyedropper tool, since we only have just one thing turned on, we're allowed to see the picture underneath. I'm going to select this blackish brown color. Okay, it is a slightly brown color. So when I did that, it defaulted that right to my fill. All right. So next, what I'd like to do is actually make a custom swatch. And I don't have that written on the list of little tools. I just noticed that. But if you go up to the drop down up here, here are all my swatches. So to make a custom swatch, I am going to hit new swatch. That's this little tiny button right here. And it's you can name it if you really wanted to, but it shows you either your COIMK or your RGB, whatever you're in. It's going to show you what that actual color is. So I'm going to hit OK, and you notice it put that little swatch right here for me so I can use it later. Okay, that's nice. So now I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to flip flop this. So it's now just on the outside. And the reason I did that is so I can now see the orange on the inside. So I'll select the orange, and this orange and the AI orange are the same orange. But I'll select that orange, and now that has it as my fill. Okay, so I'll select my stroke, and now I'll apply my swatch. So now I have both colors. Okay, but you're probably saying, well, isn't this backwards? It is. So let's flip them. Okay, so now the brown's on the inside, the orange is on the outside. And I can tell you from previously doing this that we need a thicker stroke. Okay, so right now the stroke weight is only 1 point. You can see that up here. You can also see that over here. Okay, so I'm just going to bump that stroke up. And like I said from previously doing this, I think 8 is pretty close to the actual size that it is. But you're also, or possibly saying, well, we drew it from corner to corner and the orange is out past this. Well, this is where all these options come into play. So right now, I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see. Right now, the line that I drew is right here where this blue line is going. And there's some orange on the outside, some orange on the inside. Well, that's because my stroke alignment is saying that we want to place it right in the center. So there's also other options where you can change that color of the stroke to just be on the inside, like so, or to be on the outside like that. So I'm going to move this to the inside. And you can see this orange right here. You're probably wondering what that sliver is. That orange is actually the orange from the logo. So this might not be the perfect size. If that bothers you, you can zoom out and you can get your selection tool again and just drag this over just a hair. But that doesn't bother me, so that's fine. Okay, so there's my rectangle. So what you just learned there was how to make a custom swatch, how to change back and forth between your fill and stroke, and actually how to change the colors for your fill and stroke. Now for the AI on the inside, we're going to do something different than placing it in here. I'm going to have you go File, Open this time, and what you'll also find in that folder is the AI logo. So previously, and you're going to hit Open by the way, previously I traced the AI on the actual logo itself with the pen tool, which you'll learn later on. And you can see when I select this, it selects the AI together. Okay, so over in my layers, if I hit this drop down, you see I grouped them. So expanding that group even more, The AI is separate, and even the eye has two different pieces, as you see. Okay, so there's layers inside of groups, inside of one big layer. That's awfully confusing. But this entire thing moves together, okay, because it's grouped. Now, that's with the normal selection tool. Watch what happens if you deselect everything. So click off and get the direct select. That's the white arrow. Now, if I just click on one of these shapes, I'm only editing that shape. So I directly selected that shape itself. And you can even see over here in this panel, I told you it color coordinated it. So they put a blue rectangle right next to this rectangular orange piece, because that's this one. And it's saying that it's blue, meaning it's in the blue layer, it's part of this eye, and it's part of this group. Okay, so it actually selects all of it within one. So that's kind of just showing you a little bit of the difference between the normal selection and the direct select. Now here's what you would use the direct select for as well. If we select the entire thing, you can see that the bottom of the A here is even with the bottom of the I here, but not here. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in, and I purposely did that because I want to show you how you can use the direct select. So use the direct select and click just on the A. Okay, make sure nothing else is selected. If it is, click out in the white space, click back on the A. So it shows you individual lines or paths, and they are finished with anchor points, little dots at the end. With the direct select tool, you can click and hold on those anchor points and you can drag this around. Okay, so I am going to click right on that dot and I'm going to drag this down. Now I want to try to keep it on that same angle, but if I drag down, you'll see how it kind of projects and says intersect. Okay, it's intersecting with the bottom here. So now I'm making it the exact same size. Now this line is now on an angle, so let's do that same thing. Clicking on that dot, trying to follow this same angled path here, and just sliding down until it says intersect. Okay. And that's just projecting this straight across. So if I go back to my normal selection tool and zoom out, select this thing, see how it's all even on the bottom now. So now it's all good. So I'm going to show you the difference between copying and pasting versus placing. If I copy this, so I told you the quick key is Control C. You could also just right click and hit copy. You could go up to edit and hit copy, but Control C works pretty quick. If I copy this and I go over to my other document and I do Control V, which is paste, it pastes that entire thing in. Okay, now here's the nice thing with this. It kept all of my layers together. Okay, if I were to file place and put the AI logo in, but you don't need to do this, it does not take all my layers. It's linked. It's linked to the other file. So in order to edit this, I would actually have to edit it here, and it would automatically update here. So this right now is a linked file to my AI. This is by itself. This is now a new layer in this folder or this file itself. Okay, and that's what we want. So, now I have two things. To delete something in Illustrator, you simply select it with the selection tool and you hit delete or backspace on your keyboard. Okay, so if you didn't already copy and paste this over, please copy and paste this over. Now I don't know if this AI is the correct size or not, so I'm going to turn off my rectangle just by hitting the eyeball, and I'm going to move this right over top the AI. So it is the correct size, but I don't know where it was placed. So I'm going to move this right over the other AI, and then I'll turn on my rectangle again. So to see what you have so far, let's turn off the eyeball for the linked layer down here, and you can see that's what we have created. So we're pretty much there. We're almost done already. Turn that eyeball back on. This is just a simple line. So I'm going to get my line tool. I want this line to be black. Right now it's orange, so I'll draw it first and then I'll change it. I'm going to click right there, and if you tried to drag down, you could try your best to draw a straight line, but another quick key or shortcut is holding in shift, and it makes straight lines. Notice I can only go up and down straight, I can go at a 45-degree angle or horizontal. Okay, but if I go straight up and down by holding in shift and letting go with my mouse first, then it just put a perfect vertical line. Okay, now this line right now has no stroke. So if I change this to black and I bump this up, okay, just a little bit, I'm going to go with 2. Right now it is good. It's all there. Again, if you want to check out how this worked, there's your line. You just turn off the visibility of the linked layer. Now to type, we are going to use the type tool. That's the one with a T over here. And if you click and hold and then drag down, okay, you can make a text box. So Adobe the other year, a couple versions ago, when you make a text box, put in this whole Latin phrase. I haven't looked up what that Latin phrase means, but I'm pretty sure that was like some type of joke as far as this text box form goes. You don't really need to know that. What I need you to do is just type in Adobe. So type it in just like that, Adobe. Okay, and if you want to hit return, you can, and then type in Illustrator. Okay, Adobe Illustrator. Now you can probably see that Adobe and the word Illustrator are slightly different. This one's bold, that one's not. Okay. Now I looked up online what font does Adobe Illustrator's logo use, and I found out what it actually uses. So if you highlight this by clicking and dragging across it, up at the top here, which with the normal essentials you don't have this, so this is nice. Up at the top it also shows you your fonts, okay? And this Myriad or Myriad Pro, I don't know how you actually say that word, Myriad Pro is the font choice that this logo actually has. So if yours is not already that, you're going to hit this drop down, and you of course will just go down in the huge alphabet and you will find that font, okay? Now, like I said, this one's bold, that one's not. So if I just click to unhighlight them, highlight just the Illustrator, we're going to change this from regular to semi-bold, and that's what I saw online that it is. It's semi-bold. Okay. Now we'll unselect it again, highlight it all again, and we are just going to hit the up button for point size until we think this is about that size. And mine, if you saw there, if I continue to go, it starts to disappear my stuff. So I'll show you how to fix this. You just click off and you drag your path out. So I got my directs or my normal selection tool and I just click and held on one of those path arrows or the little dots here. Now I can go back and I can double click on this, highlight it all again, and now I can continue changing the size. Okay, and that's probably close or maybe a little bit too big. So if it's not lined up perfect, you can try to just drag this over. And you notice the spacing is a little bit different. So maybe what we need to do is make Illustrator its own text box. So let's do that. Let's double click on this and I'll highlight that. To cut this, just like I said earlier, is Control X. So you are still returned right here. You can see it blinking. I'm going to hit the backspace so it's up there. Get my normal arrow and shrink this box so now it's not in my way anymore. And I'll hit Control V so it pastes it. Okay, try to line this thing up. And it looks like size-wise, I might need to go just a little bit bigger. So double click again, and you can continue to play with this if you're really picky. Since this is a demo, I'm going to try to make mine pretty close to perfect. I think mine is 95. Okay, so I got to change this one now too, 95 as far as point size. If you're like, hey, Mr. Jarrett, I get it. That's how you use a text. Hey, that's fine. Okay, this is just a simple demo. But to really try to make this logo actually match up with theirs, we need to change the spacing in between the letters themselves. So you can see the Adobe logo in the background much, much closer than what we have. We've got a big gap here. So that spacing is actually called the kerning. Okay, so I'm going to select this, and I'm going to, actually you might have to double click on it, highlight it, and we're going to go into the character up here, so the character panel. And there's a whole bunch of different options in here, but if you start to move around and it's easy just to kind of move your mouse and see what it says. Leading is actually the space from one line to the next. Okay, and this is kerning. So if you actually try to hit the down arrow for the kerning, it will give you this little warning. It says kerning on extended selections can only be set to auto or 0. To modify spacing between multiple characters, so that would be all of them, use the tracking option. Okay, so we're going to look for something else. This, I believe, is the tracking option. Okay, so we'll hit the down arrow here, and you see that E starts to slide in. We're going to continue doing that. I'm just going to hold it and let it run and see what actually happens. We'll start to pump all that stuff in. Boom, boom, boom. And it actually looks like my letters are slightly bigger. So maybe it's not 95. Maybe it's more like 90, what I originally had it. And I think what I had there before I just clicked off was minus 98. Now let's see if that's right or not. I don't think it is. There needs to be some space in between. Well, again, if you don't want to be super picky, I'm just going to go with minus 65 and call it quits there. I think that's good enough. Okay, so let's do the same thing here. I'll hit my character. I'll change the size back to 90. Apologize, that was a little bit of a change. And I'll set this to negative 65. You can just type that in. Okay, negative 65. Now you see this one's also different. So if you want to be picky and you want to fix all that, you can. But the whole point to this was to just get a feel for the layout of Illustrator and to go through a bunch of those little things that we did go through. So as far as I'm concerned, if you turn off your placed in layer of their logo, this is a replicate logo of what they had there. Looks pretty good to me. Okay, so you can save this and you can move on to the next assignment.